Now, the Business Day is reporting today on a worrying emigration trend over the past 2 years. PPS, the Professional Provident Society, has raised the alarm on the immigration of skilled professionals from South Africa. The exodus not only eating away at the country's tax base, but also further threatening job creation. I'm joined now by Izak Smit, CEO of PPS, which offers insurance and investment to graduate professionals. Thank you so much for your time this evening. So this is something that you've seen over the past 2 years, and I'm wondering if you can give us context of how much higher immigration has been in this 2-year period compared to previous years.
Oh, good evening, Sally. Of course, when we lose members, we are always very interested to know the reason why. So we track those reasons, and what we've seen, and actually for longer than 2 years, fairly consistently over a couple of years, is that between 20 and 25% of members leaving PPS say, listen, I'm immigrating. And that is, of course, as you have pointed out, a concern not only to us, but for the country.
All right, so is it worse? You say it's been over not just the last 2 years, but the last few years. We're used to terms like the brain drain. Is it worse than you've ever seen it before?
Sally, it comes and goes, you know, it's got its moments. In fact, last year, obviously, due to COVID, it was tempered a bit. But this year, again, we also see it accelerating a bit. So, yeah, and with a lag effect, I mean, the decision to emigrate is not an easy one. You cannot often link very recent events, for example, the looting that we have to say that is why it's spiking now. It needs some lead time. But yeah, it has got its moments, sadly.
Yeah. So just some of the data. You've got about 130,000 professionals in your client list. 2,500, I think, exited in the last year. 600 due to immigration. As you say, sort of 20 to 25% are listing immigration as a reason for not needing your services. Is there any official data from Home Affairs on immigration to compare it with?
There are, of course, data, but the thing is that I don't think the official data and the real impact is one must be very careful just using the official data. I think it's very difficult to get very specific data on this. But yeah, as I say, from our angle, what we can see is just our members leaving and citing immigration as a reason, which is obviously a very small part of a bigger group of people leaving the country.
So you've flagged concerns about the tax base. Are you able to extrapolate somewhat from your data on how it's likely to impact the tax base?
Now, look, Sally, the impact on South African economy is obviously on the tax side, but also it's broader than that. It's also jobs, you know, so there's a ripple effect, which in fact increases the impact on the tax base also through that indirect. So let I explain quickly. You know, a typical professional kind of create jobs all around him or her. You know, it's sometimes in their practices, it might be at home, but it's also all the services that professionals consume that they pay for. So if that falls away, if that income to other professionals and also other service providers falls away, then there's, again, also that impact on the tax base. So it's wider than only measuring, you know, the particular people that immigrating. It is a bigger problem than that.
So I'm just wondering, though, why it affects the tax base. I mean, I understand what you're saying about that person leaving and then not employing those people, but there are so many job seekers in South Africa. Surely those jobs that are vacated by those skilled professionals are so quickly snapped up.
Yeah, sometimes, but not necessarily. Remember, we are talking skilled people here, particular skills that's often not so easy for somebody else just to take it up. But as I say, it's the ripple effect. It's the impact on jobs and the impact also, therefore, on income to other people. So again, which talks to income tax of all the services that professionals themselves consume. The average professional person, actually, it's not his or her only that job specifically, but it's a lot of jobs around them that also gets impacted when a particular person immigrates.
Yeah, no, you made that point, but my point is, if we had a robust middle class with a lot of skilled people, given the desperate need for employment, you would think that there'd be 10 people lining up behind that exiting person to take over that job and then perhaps employ other people themselves. You say you don't think that's happening?
Now remember, Sally, when we talk professionals, it's years of training. It's not always, that there is like 10 people, other people to take the job. There is a desperate shortage in many areas of skilled professionals, across the board. So it's not a matter of, there's always somebody in line just to take up that specific job. I mean, you can imagine medical specialists and so on. Some of those skills immigrates, the country is poorer in terms of skills.
I just want to drill a little bit into the data, the 600 people who left due to immigration. Was that over a one-year period?
That was over a one-year period, yes. So that is the people who dropped off as members of PPS. I can just add our lapses are very low. So, I mean, it's not... our lapses are extremely low, but because we've got, as you've said earlier, more than 130,000 or around 130,000 people just who takes up our life products. We've got in our other businesses also. It is a couple of thousand, and in 1 year, 20% of them, a little bit more than 20, cited, I'm leaving the country as a reason why I am not consuming these services anymore.
All right, so take me through, obviously 2020, we can't even look at that year because no one was moving anywhere really because of lockdown. But take me back a few years if you can on previous years. I mean, are you losing more members due to immigration? Is this a high number that 600 people or nearly 20% of your members who left in 1 year said it's immigration? Is that higher than ever before or not?
Yeah, I cannot give you statistics higher than, it comes and goes. And as I say, it's a lag effect. Sometimes it's just got its moments. I mean, there were years in the past when it's higher, lower, but you must be very careful to link it to specific events. But what I can tell you is that in this market segment, it is a significant issue. Just to give you an example, for example, we provide the administration services for a couple of other medical schemes. I mean, Provident is one of the schemes, and there we see exactly the same statistics. Provident members leaving, typically about 1 in 4, 1 in 5 say, I'm immigrating. But we also provide services to other medical schemes in other market segments, and their immigration is actually very, very small. So our concern is just that this is a real issue in a market segment which I believe and we believe the country cannot afford, to lose people to this extent.
And when you ask people why they're immigrating, what are the main reasons they give you?
Now, look, when we officially measure these statistics I'm talking about, we don't ask that question, but we do get informal, a lot of our services are through our financial advisors. So it's more, what shall I call it, a qualitative, feedback that we get than these quantitative. But look, it's numerous. It's also positive reasons, especially amongst the youngsters. It's not necessarily, the usual negative stuff like I'm paying too much tax or I'm concerned about security or healthcare or things like that. There's also positive reasons. Maybe it's a career, maybe it's a particular project somebody's going to work on. And the good news is some of those also come back. They pick up skills, and sometimes also for lifestyle reasons, they do come back to South Africa. The only thing is that those leaving are more than those coming back, and some of those youngsters don't come back at all. So yeah, they are the from a qualitative, I mean, the big three things that professionals are very concerned and that's close to them is education, and children's education is a big one. Security, personal security, and then healthcare is another big one. And those are the big three, if I can call it that, from almost a social perspective, which is often a prompt for immigrating.
Yeah, so you're telling us really that amongst the highly skilled workers, the people we need to hang on to for the tax base, but also for employing others, there's a higher proportion of them emigrating from South Africa, which is very worrying in itself. What do we do to stop the exodus? You know, and I asked this question against the backdrop, yes, as you say, that the July unrest was very unsettling for many people. But we've also just, you know, and we're still in the middle of it really. COVID-19 has changed the entire world, but it's also unsettled everybody. So how do we keep skills in South Africa? Have you had those discussions?
Yeah, certainly. I think it's a big one for our policymakers, Sally. So, for example, you know, NHI, the message that we just give to policymakers is very, very careful how you shape these things. First of all, you cannot lose the providers of these services, you know, healthcare professionals, but also the bigger tax base. So just be sensitive, you know, around that. I mean, of course, we need national healthcare. And we must develop policies around that, but be very careful about the particular market segment that you just cannot afford to chase away or scare away. I think that, so from a policy perspective. Then on the tax side, of course, you know, careful about that one as well. You cannot just tax more. We know we've got a very skewed tax base. The Gini coefficient is very skewed. Number of people paying income tax in the country very small. Again, very careful about that. We might be at the wrong side of the Laffer curve, which means if you're going to up your taxes, you're just going to shrink the tax base. So, but then, you know, there's something all of us can also do, you know, and that is don't get stuck in the negative. I mean, it's a wonderful country. There's so many positives, and we can all be also moving to a positive space.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. And as my mother always said, the grass is not greener on the other side necessarily. Thank you for your time this evening. Izak Smit, CEO of PPS, the Professional Provident Society, talking about an increase in immigration that they are noting, particularly among highly skilled workers.